Hello and welcome to Hope After. This podcast is for couples navigating the impact of pornography on their marriage. And today we're going to talk about something many couples avoid, even when they want healing more than anything. And we're going to talk about naming the damage. Not to shame, not to punish, not to keep the wounds open or replay the past for the sake of it. We're talking about naming the damage because in real life, what isn't named can't be repaired. When damage stays unnamed, it doesn't quietly disappear. It tends to leak out sideways. It shows up as anxiety that won't settle, resentment that simmers under the surface, and distance that becomes normal, or repeated conflict that never quite makes sense. So if you've been trying to move forward, but something keeps catching in your chest, or you keep circling the same arguments, or you feel like you're fine one day and undone the next, then this episode will help you put language to what's been going on. Now, as always, these episodes are here to give you shared language and orientation. And if you want deeper structure and guidance to work through this slowly and safely, we can help give you that framework across set stages. All the details are in the show notes whenever you're ready. Right, let's talk honestly about what pornography actually damaged and why naming it matters so much for healing. Now, there's a point many couples reach where something like this gets said, and sometimes gently, sometimes with frustration. Can't we just move forward now? Or do we have to keep talking about it? Or why are we still here? And I understand why that question comes up, because it often comes from fatigue. You want the marriage to feel normal again. You want something steady. You want the air to clear. But here's the problem. Moving forward without naming the damage usually isn't moving forward. It's just moving around it. And what's avoided doesn't stay neatly in its corner. It lives in the atmosphere. Now, Jez, do you want to share how that felt for you, that pull to get out of the conversation and into the future?
Yeah, of course. I just, like you just said there, we just want it to end. We don't want to battle through these things, but it's just so important to go through it very steadily.
Yeah, there was a kind of sense of you just want it to stop. So you kind of pretend that nothing's happened, but you can still sort of sense it in the air, really, can't you?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's just one of those old-fashioned things where you just want to brush it under the carpet and just move on without that pull over you.
Now, for a lot of men, it's not that you don't care. It's that once your wife starts naming what's been affected, you don't know how to hold it without being swallowed by it. And when you don't know what to do with her pain, you reach for the thing that feels safest. Let's stop talking about it. From the wife's side, though, something tightens when the damage stays unspoken, not because she wants to stay stuck and not because she's asking for the same conversation forever. It's because she needs to know that what happened actually mattered and that it mattered to you too. Because when the damage isn't named, women often end up carrying it alone, and that can make you feel not only hurt, but unseen. So this episode is for couples right there, caught between wanting to heal and fearing that naming the damage will make things worse. Naming the damage can feel oddly threatening, and it usually threatens different things for each person. For many women, naming damage is sanity. It's how you stop questioning your own reactions. It's how you stop trying to prove to yourself that something real happened. When you can name it, you can stop living in that foggy place where you keep wondering if you're overreacting. For many men, though, naming damage can feel dangerous. It can sound like a verdict. It can sound permanent. It can feel like you're being told, this is who you are, or this is what you've done to our marriage. And you worry that if it's spoken aloud, it will define you forever, or at least define the marriage forever. And that fear is one of the reasons couples get stuck. The woman feels she can't heal without truth, and the man feels he can't survive the truth without shame. Now, Jez, can you say a word here? What did you fear would happen if the damage was named properly?
Well, for me, I just felt it was going to be an everlasting thing that would just carried on, where you was going to be unable to forgive me. I just felt the marriage wasn't going to work because there was this huge amount of shame that I felt, and I just felt it would carry on. Yeah. Avoiding the truth doesn't protect a marriage. It keeps it fragile. It keeps you in place where things look fine on the surface, but underneath nothing feels steady. And when a marriage becomes fragile like that, it doesn't take much to crack it. Okay, we're going to talk about damage further, and I want to slow it down because damage does not mean the marriage is over. It doesn't mean that nothing good was real, and it doesn't mean healing is impossible. Damage simply means something important was harmed. And in healthy systems, harm is named so repair can begin. That's true in friendships, in parenting, even in the workplace, and it's certainly true in marriage. Ignoring damage doesn't make it go away. Usually it just reappears in other forms. Like I said, anxiety that won't settle, or distance that grows quietly. Intimacy that feels complicated, or repeated arguments that seem like they're about something small but feel huge. So when we say naming the damage, we're not saying stay stuck. We're saying tell the truth so you can stop living in confusion. Now, I remember saying to Jez at one point, I don't think you understand what this took from me. And you looked genuinely confused, not defensive in that moment, but honestly confused. And it's such a common moment because from a wife's perspective, it feels obvious. You're thinking, how can you not see what this has done? But from the husband's perspective, he's thinking, I've stopped using, I'm trying, I'm still here. So what else is there? So do you remember what you were thinking in that moment, Jez? Well, I do remember, thinking, about understanding. I just felt that I was trying to do everything as much as I possibly could, which I thought was the right thing to be doing. Yeah. And I remember saying, and I meant it, that I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I'm telling you because I don't want to carry it alone anymore. And that is often the turning point because the wife isn't trying to punish. She's trying to bring the husband into the reality she's been living in every day. And for the husband, this is where the whole thing can shift from I'm being accused to I'm being invited to take responsibility with you instead of leaving you to carry the consequences alone. When couples name damage honestly, it usually falls into a fewer areas, not in a dramatic way, in a deep way, the kind of deep that changes how you experience everyday life. Porn damaged trust, and not only trust in the husband, often it becomes trust in your own reality, because when something has been hidden for a long time, you start wondering what else you missed. You start doubting your instincts. You start asking yourself how you didn't know. Porn damaged safety, emotional safety, sexual safety, relational safety. The marriage becomes unpredictable. It becomes harder to relax because relaxation requires a sense that danger has passed. And if the danger is secrecy, then the body stays braced until it's convinced secrecy is genuinely gone. Porn damaged intimacy because closeness stopped feeling exclusive. For many wives, intimacy becomes complicated after pornography because intimacy is meant to be shared and protected. And suddenly it feels like there's been a third presence in the marriage, even if it wasn't a person.
And pornography damages self-perception, especially for women. It can change how you see your body, how you see your desirability, how you see your worth, even when you know better. Not because women are vain, but because betrayal hits identity. It hits dignity. It hits the part of you that wants to feel chosen, safe, and not compared. And I want to say this gently. Naming these things doesn't mean every good moment in your marriage was fake. It doesn't mean your whole story was a lie. It means something real was wounded, and wounds deserve honesty. Jez, can you share briefly what you realised porn damaged in you, not as a victim, but as a man trying to see clearly?
Yeah, I think this whole thing is all about honesty. And that certainly was really hard because it made honesty so much harder because of what I was hiding.
Yeah, for many men as well, porn damages integrity because you get used to living with a divided self, one public self, one private self. It can damage self-respect because you start doing things you said you wouldn't do. And then you live with that internal contradiction. It can damage presence because porn trains escape as coping, and that affects emotional availability in the marriage. Naming that isn't about making the man the victim. It's about understanding why willpower alone often doesn't hold, and why pretending it hasn't affected you can keep the cycle in place. So why do women need damage named out loud? So many women already know what was damaged because they can feel it every day. They feel it when they wake up anxious, or when intimacy feels complicated, or when they look in the mirror and they don't recognise themselves emotionally. What hurts is when it stays unspoken, or when it's minimised, or when it's rushed past as though it's inconvenient. When damage isn't named, women start to question themselves. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe I should be over this by now. Or maybe I'm the problem. Naming damage protects women from self-erasure. It stops that quiet pressure to shrink your injury to keep the marriage calm. And women need to know they're not crazy for still feeling the effects, because those effects are often the body's way of saying, this mattered. So why are men tempted to minimise? They often minimise not because they don't care, but because they feel overwhelmed and trapped. Minimising becomes a way to reduce the intensity of the moment so you can breathe. It's a normal form of emotional escape. So it can sound like it wasn't that bad, or we still had good times, or can't we focus on the positives? But minimising doesn't calm trauma. It invalidates it. And when a wife feels invalidated, she doesn't become calmer, she becomes more distressed, because now she's not only carrying the injury, she's carrying it alone. Jez, what helped you learn to stay present without minimising, even when you felt uncomfortable?
For me, I felt it was just, I needed to be near you, but I was still carrying this immense amount of guilt. So I just tried to sort of, didn't want to talk about it, obviously, but just to stay present with Jo, and hopefully to help her, make her feel more comfortable with the situation. But admitting that there was this problem with the pornography, just wanted to feel like I just really wanted to come alongside Jo, and we just needed to talk things through pretty much all the time at that time.
Yeah. What helps most is realising that you don't have to fix everything in that moment. You don't need the perfect answer. You don't need to tidy it up with a speech. You need to acknowledge that the damage exists and that it mattered. And acknowledgement is often the first thing that creates safety. It tells a wife, you're not alone in this anymore. So let's talk about naming the damage without shame, because this matters deeply, and I want to say it slowly. Naming the damage is not rehearsing failure. It isn't punishing someone forever. It isn't staying trapped in the past. It's saying, this mattered, and because it mattered, we will take it seriously. Shame says, I'm bad, and it leads to hiding, defensiveness, collapse, or self-pity that the wife then has to manage. Responsibility says, I caused harm and I'm willing to face it. And then it leads to honesty and repair over time. Healing requires the second, not the first. So what happens when damage is named well? When it's named honestly and calmly, something shifts. It doesn't fix everything overnight. It doesn't erase pain, but it changes the atmosphere. Defensiveness reduces because the conversation stops being a fight for who's right and becomes an honest naming of what's happened. Clarity increases because the marriage stops living in vagueness. Women stop feeling crazy because their experience has language and acknowledgement. And men stop feeling hunted because it's no longer about endless punishment. It's about facing reality with maturity. And in many marriages, something settles enough that you can keep going without constantly rebleeding. If this episode has helped you find some words for something that's been heavy and unspoken, that matters. This podcast helps you name the damage. We can help you respond to that safely, gradually, and without shame. We can guide you through naming harm without re-traumatizing, holding impact without collapse, and preparing for repair at the right pace. So if you'd like that one-to-one support or both of us helping both of you, you don't have to do this all alone. There's no pressure to enroll or book anything today, but you'll find the details in the show notes for whenever you are ready. I want to close with something that can feel surprising. Naming the damage isn't what destroys a marriage. Avoiding it can. Jez, would you like to add anything here about what nearly did more harm for us?
Yeah, avoiding it nearly did more damage than naming it.
Yeah, truth didn't destroy us, it steadied us. It gave us something solid to stand on, and it stopped the marriage being built on denial and fear. In the next episode, we'll begin turning towards repair, what healing actually asks of both people after the damage has been named. For now, let honesty replace fear. Let responsibility replace defensiveness. And remember, naming damage is not the end of the story. It's often the first moment the story becomes real enough to heal.